Yes, Nina. Okay, great. Great. So I'm going to hold here on the screen until you give me the go ahead. We're live. Excellent. Thank you so much. Amazing staff troubleshooting. So I appreciate all the effort. So we are live. We are streaming, which will make this meeting available in full later today or tomorrow. So let's see here for you. Okay, thank you, Nina. Yep, hiccups happen. So technology is a blessing and sometimes super challenging. So here we go. Starting a little bit late, our apologies, but we feel like it's important that the meeting be captured and available to folks for future review. We're going to do some real brief general updates, and then we'll talk about permit processing. Permit processing is the bulk of the conversation we're going to have today. So we're going to stick with, I would like to stick with permit processing for the discussion times today. How to participate in today's meeting. Just reminding everyone that we do have the chat feature. It is open. You can find the Q&A chat feature by hovering your cursor either in the lower portion or the top of your screen. If you're on the Zoom app, this should give you the toolbar. The toolbar has a little chat box that says Q&A. If you click on that Q&A chat box, it will pop open a box where you can type in a question or a comment. Those only come to the panelists, which consist of Nina and myself this morning. So we'll see those when we get to time for public comment and discussion. We'll work through a combination of questions and comments in that chat box or that Q&A feature. And then we'll also provide opportunity for oral questions, which you can cue yourself for those questions by raising your hand. The raise hand feature is also located in the same toolbar as the Q&A feature. And if you are not on the Zoom app, you're calling in perhaps, you can still raise your hand by using *9 on your touchpad phone. And when we get to oral comments, you can mute and unmute by hovering your cursor in the upper right-hand side of your identification square on the Zoom app. This will give you a mute or unmute symbol. And then also potentially in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you may find a mute or unmute symbol where you are, if you're on the Zoom app. If you're calling in and need to unmute once we call on you or provide permission for you to make your comment, you can unmute by using *6, and we'll repeat these instructions as we get into public comment. Just a heads up about technical assistance pop-ups. The next 2 Fridays will wrap up our technical assistance. So on this Friday, September 23rd, we'll be in Fort Bragg. We have no more appointments available for the Fort Bragg. So if for some reason you want to be on the wait list, please email cannabisprogram@mendocinocounty.org. But for right now, we're fully booked. Same is true for Laytonville, which will be on September 30th. That is also fully booked. I did receive some questions about confirmations for Fort Bragg. We'll get confirmation emails out later today, tomorrow, so folks have the information for Fort Bragg before needing to arrive. Quick LEAP spending update. I want to clarify that round 3 funds are not identified here, only round 1 and round 2. Round 3 funds, I don't believe we've dipped into these. I have not updated this slide since we met previously, which was a couple Fridays ago. But we have met our goals in our spend down timelines for round 1 and round 2 funding, which will make us eligible for to apply for a 4th round of funding. We do not know the solicitation dates or the timelines for that application process. Nobody does. It hasn't been announced. Generally, the equity eligible grant applications for local jurisdictions open up in the fall. So we are expecting this to come up sometime, probably late October, early November. But we don't have the dates as of yet. And a reminder, our late monthly meeting is this afternoon from 3:30 to 5, and you can find the login information on the website by going to the 2022 events page. LJAGP, we have not heard back from the state regarding the progress report we submitted, which does have a number of budget amendment requests or proposals. Just a reminder, in that draft progress reporting that submitted on August 25th, we requested the use of LJAGP funds to support county council and or outside counsel so that we could have kind of a more kind of focused counsel for the department, hopefully to reduce timelines. We requested increased funding for sensitive species habitat review to cover the costs of phase 1 and phase 2 applicants who need referrals to Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I think it's worth mentioning that the department has not stopped conducting sensitive species habitat reviews. It's referrals that are held up because of Fish and Wildlife contract negotiations, but not all sensitive species habitat reviews result in a referral. Additionally, we've requested funding for staff because when we initially applied for LJAGP funding, it was before we had been finalized as a department, meaning it was also before the department's staffing allocation table was finalized, right? That kind of all happened in one fell swoop in October, just after we had applied, and early November after we had applied for this grant. So we'd like to adjust the budget to account for the additional staff that we'll be bringing on board. We also had included in the initial grant application that was approved funding for portal development, track it development, field inspection development, and we'd like to change the funding for those programs to Acela. So we're waiting to hear back on this. We are still on our timeline to have the direct grant program manual, which will include an application on the board or on the agenda for General Government Committee on October 17. We're hoping to put the item on the Board of Supervisors agenda for the next day. So we're still looking at mid-October to get the materials finalized for the direct grant portion of LJAGP. I don't have a lot of updates here, but just a reminder, we did open and close the RFQ for cannabis planning services. We've completed review of those submissions, and we're currently working on our contract negotiations with qualified entities. Acela update, kind of two processes in this contract that we've been working on. We first had to run what's called an exception to bid. We've completed that. That's been approved, and that is done. The contract itself for Acela as a product and the implementation support that we need to get Acela up and running and get the trainings done and all of the data transferred from our multitude of track it and filing systems into Acela. That contract is currently being processed in the county here, meaning that it's in Cobblestone. And it's working through the review process. Once it comes through that review process, it will go before the Board of Supervisors for approval. We're still hopeful that that will occur in October, that we'll be able to get that on the consent calendar for October. And I apologize, I put Board O Supervisors here. Oh, goodness. We forgot the F and the of. And then once we get approval from the Board of Supervisors, we can start the implementation process, which includes data transfer. Once we've got all of the migration conducted or completed, we'll move into staff training. We'll run some staff training, all staff training. And then we're hoping to be fully completed and utilizing Acela as our primary by January 1st. As many of you may be aware from watching the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, the Board of Supervisors directed county staff to relocate the cannabis department from where our current location is at 579 Low Gap to the Willits Justice Center. I could have put, excuse me, more information on the slide. Pardon me, hold on just a moment. Okay, sorry about that, excuse me. But really, this is going to be a critical move. It will provide us the space we need to manage our staffing. We're currently at 15 out of 23 in our staffing. We have no more office space available in the location we're at. And there's not the ability to create those office spaces here at the location we're at. So the Willits Justice Center does have the space we'll need to meet our full staffing allocation. And so we will be moving there. I imagine this will be a move that will happen fairly quickly. We don't have the exact timelines, but during yesterday's board meeting, the discussion included comments that the Willits Justice Center is pretty much move-in ready. It needs to be kind of fine-tuned by informational services to make sure that all of our IT needs are met, but the IT installation was done many years ago, so it's not a new installation. It's just a maintenance that needs to occur. So it's likely we'll be making that transition, excuse me, mid-October-ish. I want to move on to priority review. I want to remind folks that on May 17th of 2022, the County of Mendocino Board of Supervisors directed staff, department staff, to prioritize the processing of applications that have active Department of Cannabis Control licenses and that have paid any associated local cannabis business taxes. We have been working, staff has been working diligently to wrap up and reconcile the delinquent tax rolls we've received from the TTC. We received them in individual years, 2018, 2019, 2020, and then lastly, 2021. So this takes some time. It's not like we get a list of AGs that are delinquent. What we receive is a list of business names with tax trust numbers and business tax account numbers and APNs. And then staff has to go through and search each of those APNs to match it with an AG number, an application or permit number. And so it has been fairly time consuming. And staff is wrapping that up, and then we're working on just doing our double checks and our due diligence. So we're just about there on this part. Additionally, in order to verify the active nature of Department of Cannabis Control licenses, we have staff assigned to opening all portal submissions and issue permits and track it to document the type of DCC license folks have and that license's expiration date. I want to remind folks that if you, we will have more deprioritization notices going out in the next 2 weeks. So I think it's helpful to remind folks that if you're deprioritized due to delinquent taxes and you are a LEAP certified applicant, we've increased the LEAP waiver program threshold to $30,000. And if the applicant goes in and pays all penalties and interest at the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, they can bring that receipt or email that receipt showing that only the delinquent taxes are due, and then they're eligible to apply a waiver to the payment for the payment of those delinquent taxes. You can find waiver forms for taxes and other types of permits that can be waived by going to the Forms and Resources page on the Cannabis Program website. And the link is here, and the slideshow will be available when the slideshow is posted. Preliminary review numbers. We're looking at about a 50% deprioritization rate currently. We have 63 folks that we know we need to get additional information from. They came through the corrections portal about outstanding issues such as lack of or outstanding issues such as the department staff's inability to verify that they're compliant with DFW requirements, or lack of ability to verify that they still have property owner consent, and or lack of ability to verify that there's a legal water source associated with the site. Within those 63 that we need additional information, 40 of them have been deprioritized. C portal means that folks completed their applications through the portal, right? Either in 2021 or 2022. We have over 300 records to go through in that category to reconcile whether or not the DCC licenses that were submitted or the applications are valid. We're currently doing that work. We've made it through 221 of them so far, and out of that 221, 148 of them have been deprioritized. I do want to say that the vast majority of the deprioritizations occurring are because of delinquent taxes. But we also have been noticing a somewhat alarming rate of folks allowing their applications, or their licenses, I should say, provisional licenses of the state to expire. And so a fairly significant rate of failure to renew at the state level. For the 95 on this table that are listed as tax only, the completed portal, but tax only, it means all we've done is reviewed the taxes. So we've cleared these 95 of tax deprioritization. We're now wrapping them up by going through and looking at their licensing. We have 123 applicants that are in the in good standing category. We've only been able to verify their tax status. We don't have enough records available to us to know whether or not these 123 are licensed. So out of the 123, 51 have been deprioritized due to tax status issues. We had a number of folks that were eligible for the corrections portal that came in that are deprioritized. So 97 out of the 98 still holding this status, right? Were deprioritized because of tax and or PCC licensure issues. There were 16 folks that came through the 2021 portal that were not eligible for the 2022 corrections portal. Some of these are veg mods, and these are also other compliance issues that that we determined were not going to be correctable through the corrections portal. And so out of those 16, 15 of those applications have tax delinquencies and or licensing issues that would make them deprioritized. Out of the eligible correction portal, there may be more that I haven't accounted for in the failure to submit. So we have these 11 applications or applicants on this table today who failed to submit in 2021 and or 2022. And the reason why we have some folks who failed in 2021 is we allowed everyone who started a portal entry in 2021 to qualify for the corrections portal in 2022. There were a number of folks that still didn't show up in 2022, even after we provided an additional opportunity for folks to manage their corrections or completing their portal applications. Out of the folks who have failed to submit in 2021 and or just in 2022, we've got 9 folks that were deprioritized due to tax statuses. If you failed to submit in both instances, there's no license for us to look up. So we've really focused on just looking at the tax status only on these. We have 14 folks who are on hold. I can't necessarily tell you the details about why they're on hold. We're looking at re-statusing these folks so that they fit into one of our other categories. 2 of them are deprioritized for tax issues. We have 259 active permits. We haven't gotten into the opening and verification of DCC licenses for active permits. But out of the 259 active permits, 71 of them are deprioritized due to tax status. We have 17 active permits or applications in our records that have filed for notice of application stay, and permits that have applied for and received non-cultivation status. Out of the 17 that have applied for NOS and or non-cultivation, 15 are deprioritized because of tax and or DCC related licensing issues. Part of the reason for putting this slide together today is to draw attention to the fact that we're at about 900 active AG numbers between issued permits and applications currently. This does not include phase 3. And out of that, our records currently show that around 448, almost 50%, fall into this category of deprioritization. Now, I do want to say that folks are steadily and surely managing their tax liability to come back into prioritization. And we expect that folks will continue to manage that liability to come into prioritization. But with general or today's economics, it does seem to be a slow process and challenging for folks. So we want to make sure that when we're conducting reviews, we're maintaining the statuses. So when folks reprioritize, we can find them in our records, we can move them into the queue for processing. I think the other thing to mention here before we go forward is that as we're looking at these priority and deprioritization for reviews, it doesn't mean that we're not going to review you if you fall into the status. And we can't review for delinquent taxes. But when we're looking at DCC licenses, part of what we'll be doing as we close out fallowing, because fallowing is currently open for another 9 days or so, we'll be adding records of who's fallowed and at what level. We'll be considering that when we're looking at DCC licensing. And also there's folks who just may not have fallowed that are not operational, who don't have DCC licenses. So don't be surprised if you get outreach to try to figure out, to try to figure out where we can move you into the processing of your application. But taxes really are an important component because we've been directed to not review applications or active permits that are delinquent in taxes. So the other thing I want to say is as we're putting license information into a tracking spreadsheet with all of this additional information, we are going to be using the expiration of those license dates to ensure that we have worked with the applicant or permit holder to ensure that that Appendix G is completed and in-house so that they are eligible for renewal on or after that July 1st of 2023 deadline. So it's probably important to remind folks that as of July 1st, 2023, the department, all local jurisdictions who have ministerial programs based on statute will be required to notify the DCC as to whether or not the applicant or permit holder locally has a completed Appendix G checklist. And a completed Appendix G checklist for our folks is what is going to be necessary for a renewal on or after July 1st of 2023. There seems to be a pretty significant misunderstanding that everyone has to have annual licenses by July 1st of 2023, and that simply is not the case. The DCC has the ability to renew renew provisional licenses up through December 31st of 2024. No more provisional licenses may be renewed after January 1st of 2025. And then all provisional licenses will expire as of January 1st of 2026. So I think it's very important that we take a step back and we all recognize that the goal here for success in helping ensure folks are eligible for annual license is not ensuring that they have annual licenses by July 1st of 2023. It's ensuring that we've done everything we can to get those Appendix G checklists in-house in a completed manner so that folks are eligible for provisional renewal as their licenses, their state licenses come up for renewal on or after that July 1st of 2023 timeline. So let's talk about in good standing. We're going to start here because in good standing really is posing some challenges for the department. I'm terribly sorry to say, but we are struggling with it. Applicants who were provided an in good standing status received and responded to corrections letters in 2020, right? That's 2 years ago at this point. To achieve the in good standing status, applicants submitted materials that completed or mostly completed their application packet. We have 123 applicants identified as in good standing. 51 of those applicants are currently under deprioritization status because of delinquent taxes. We have not been able to run a DCC license verification check on these because of the challenges we're going to talk about right now. So the materials that were submitted in 2020 by applicants responding to corrections letters were not reviewed by program or planning staff, and that was based on directive from leadership at the time. But also, and probably more concerning or challenging, is that the materials submitted were not consistently filed or managed due to a lack of developed process for the corrections letter program. So there wasn't a policy or process in place for the filing of the materials that came in for that correction letter program. Last time we talked or met, we talked about the challenges and a review plan, which could have included department staff conducting a forensic restructuring or recreation of those application packets. That would be so incredibly time consuming. I don't know that it would benefit these in good standing applicants to have us go through all of our records and try to pull together what we think may have been submitted in 2020. We have since discussed having all in good standing applicants move their or submit their application materials through the portal. This seems like the most streamlined way to ensure that we can gather those materials from in good standing applicants. We explored and talked about using SharePoint folders for this. However, while SharePoint works for many, it poses challenges for quite a few. We've been using SharePoint with Renewals. We used SharePoint to gather information from folks who failed to complete their 2022 corrections portal submissions. Folks who don't have Microsoft accounts have to set up Microsoft accounts. Mac users have been challenged. So we have a lot of concerns that trying to manage 163 application submissions through SharePoint could be problematic, not just for department staff and helping applicants troubleshoot, but the timelines that it might take for applicants to troubleshoot SharePoint. So we really do prefer the portal. the other thing about the portal is it automatically names all of those files that come in, puts them into our naming convention that we use internally, which means that those files are ready for transfer and upload into Acela as soon as they come into, our house here, our department. We're looking at some timelines. We talked about trying to launch this as early as October 3rd. The thing I like about trying to launch this on October 3rd and running an initial submission portal from October 3rd to the 31st, and then providing approximately 3 weeks for corrections to be conducted by the public or by the in good standing applicants, is that we can then reopen for corrections on November 21 and run that through December 16th, and then conduct all reviews and be done by the end of the year. This for department staff is probably the most beneficial timeline. It would be so fabulous to be done by the end of the year so that we can appropriately cue folks into the review timeline. I did talk to some members of the public about this timeline, and it seems pretty incredibly unpalatable to folks. I'm sympathetic about that, and I understand that. I think all of our staff does, frankly. We are looking at what happens if we push it out 2 weeks and we open for initial submissions October 17th through November 7th. We think opening October 17th and running the initial submissions through November 7th means that we would be able to get initial review comments back to in good standing submitters by November 11th. That would then provide folks with 3 weeks to get their corrections into a 25-day corrections portal. Part of the issue with this timeline is that we're then running, a lot of the corrections will be coming in. Well, folks will be conducting corrections to prep for the December 5th timeline over the Thanksgiving holiday, which is challenging. And then B, we've got the Christmas holiday running in the middle of the submission timeline from December 5th to the 30th. We do think if we went with the second option here, starting on October 17th, that we would be able to complete portal reviews by January 13th. Some of the delay for us is that it's likely we will have lean staffing that first week of January as folks plan for holiday time off. Looking at the third option here is pushing out initial submissions of the in good standing portal for until October 30th or 31st, and running that through December 21st. So that would close the initial submission portal just before Thanksgiving. But I don't know that we would be able to get submissions back to folks before December 30th because we are going to be closed 24th and 25th for Thanksgiving. So the holidays do create some bumpy, hard timelines here. And really what we'd like during public comment is some feedback. We do realize that proper noticing is going to be important. So is flexibility and leniency on the side of the department. But I want to just emphasize how important it is that we get complete application packets so we can really work with people in a meaningful and thoughtful manner. In this third timeline, we believe the corrections portal would open on December 13th. This would still provide folks roughly, it's short, 2.5 weeks or something to get their corrections together. And then we would open for around 30 days under this proposed timeline. The holidays definitely create some pain here. So with that said, on the third timeline, we believe due to the likelihood of staffing shortages for us in the beginning of January, that we would be able to complete reviews by January 20th. So I'm going to leave that there, and we're going to move on to a few more things before we open for discussion. With completed portal applications, we received or had applicants complete 316 applications through the portal. This number creeps up on a regular basis as folks are reprioritized for that 2022 corrections portal. And then we put them back into the review queue, they get reviewed, and a lot of them have complete applications as they come back in. So these numbers are edging up, which is reassuring. We still have 95 completed portal applications that are undergoing DCC review to understand better what their priority status is or whether or not we need to deprioritize them. We have quite a few folks that I've been noticing as I've been working on this with staff that submitted applications in 2021 that haven't turned into licenses. And then we had a number of folks who have allowed their licenses to lapse between the 2021 portal and today. But again, they may be fallowed and they may be non-operational. So we'll be asking those questions if they don't have tax delinquencies as well. Within that 316, we've identified 148 applications that are deprioritized, and really those are largely due to taxes. So please, if you can, and you want us to reprioritize your application, please do pay those delinquent taxes. We don't currently have completed portal applications under review, but again, part of getting the license type and expiration dates into a tracking system will help us understand how to prioritize those completed portal applications. So we will be not only looking at the timelines for everyone's renewal, we're also going to be sorting by zoning so we can assign applications zoned RR and AG to contract planners. We're going to assign remainder of applications to department staff. We'll be looking at final review will begin after backlog of renewals has been cleared. That may even overlap a bit depending on our timeline for wrapping up contracts with qualified entities that applied for or provided submissions for the RFQ where we closed recently. Inspections, there's been lots of questions about inspections. We will be sure to conduct inspections during review before issuance of a permit if you have not already had a pre-site inspection. And if you have had a pre-site inspection but have had modifications, we'll be conducting a second pre-site inspection. Currently, our inspections are largely focused on complaint-driven inspection needs. Renewals, I've got some strike-through numbers on here. The strike-through numbers represent what we presented last time. And really, I want to show progress on the renewals. We now have 150 renewals in the queue for review. We've got 95 of them under review. 47 of them are assigned to planner tech staff for completeness checks. So you may be getting a notice to complete your renewal application. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then I've got 48 that are complete that are assigned to planners that are wrapping them up. So please, if you are under renewal review, please do respond to the planners so that we can continue to move these along in a timely fashion. We have around 18 of the 95 that are under review also have modifications. So those do slow things down a bit, but they're being processed simultaneously to that renewal. The thing that's really tricky about the renewals currently is that we're pressing these Appendix G timelines. And in order to process whether we're developing an Appendix G or we're reviewing an Appendix G that the applicant chose to have prepared and submitted to us, those sensitive species habitat review and the AQMD review has to be completed. So the vast majority of the almost 300 permits that were issued by the department did not undergo sensitive species habitat review, did not undergo air quality management district review. So we are spending a significant amount of time wrapping up those environmental reviews to ensure that folks qualify for Appendix G submission and review. Additionally, a lot of folks have very old, like 2017, 2018 Colton Ops plans that they submitted, don't have updated site plans. And so we are asking folks with really old cultivation operations plans to submit updated cultivation operations plans. So we have all of the materials we need to verify in Appendix G that's submitted. But also we are planning on moving into offering the drafting of Appendix Gs. And we won't be able to do that without up-to-date Colton Ops plans, structures lists, site plans. So I know there's been some requests that we try to process renewals within 30 days. If we didn't have improperly issued permits, that would be totally viable. And as we move into Acela and we've wrapped up kind of our cleanup on renewals, we will be automating the renewal process. So in the future, once you've been through sensitive species habitat review, AQMD, and we've got updated materials for that renewal, which allows us to either review or craft an Appendix G. And we have Acela stood up. The renewal process will become somewhat automated if you don't have modifications. So we will be able to move into that, but trying to do that today with the state of the issued permits, many of them not having environmental reviews conducted, is not possible. Reminder, notice of fallowing is available. The notice of fallowing is on the website. You do have to also submit a site plan with the fallowing affidavit. The fallowing timeline closes or submission closes at the end of the month. Right now, we're taking these in, we're setting them aside. We're going to start conducting reviews of these probably early next week. And don't worry, get your paperwork in. If we need additional information, we'll gather that from you as we process them, even though it may be after the deadline for initial submission. So submit your materials, get them into us if you need to fallow or you fallowed this year. Note that the site plan that you submit, and you have to submit a site plan with the affidavit, needs to clearly show all fallowed areas. And if you're only fallowing a portion of your cultivation site, we need you to put on that site plan the cumulative square footage of any non-fallowed cultivation area. Also, if you're fallowing your processing, you won't be doing any processing on site, please do identify that on your site plan. If you're fallowing your immature plant area, please let us know. All this information should be on the site plan. And you can literally handwrite it on there if you need to. It needs to be legible and clear for the department, but we really need the information about what you're fallowing. If it's 100% or a portion, we need that information on that site plan so that we can determine tax liability and then send a record list to TTC. Okay, I'm just about done talking here. We're gonna have some Q&A. I apologize again for running late. We'll try to get to as much of the questions and answers that are out there as possible. I have 2 folks with their hands raised in the queue for oral comments. We've got 9 open comments and or questions in the Q&A feature. Again, the Q&A feature can be used by going to your toolbar, clicking on the chat box that says Q&A, and then entering in or typing in your question or comment. We'll go through a combination of questions and comments in the Q&A feature and oral or verbal questions. If you want to make a comment, Orally, you can raise your hand. If you're on the Zoom app, you can raise your hand utilizing the raise hand feature, which is located in the toolbar near the Q&A feature. If you're calling in today, you can raise your hand using *9 on your phone. A reminder about how to mute and unmute if you want to make oral comments. You can mute or unmute by using the mute, clicking the mute microphone once we call on you. If you're on the Zoom app, or if you find your identification screen on your main screen of the Zoom app and hover your cursor on your identification box, you'll get a blue highlighted mute unmute option in one of the corners. So those are the options for Zoom. And if you're on your phone, once we call on you for oral comment, you can unmute your device by using *6. So a question about the LGHEP Direct Grant Manual. There's a member or an attendee wanting to know if it can be reviewed for public comment before it is submitted to the GGC. It will be posted for public comment in accordance with Brown Act guidelines. So we have to turn it in by the end of the month in order for it to make it onto the GGC meeting. So it will have the same posting requirements and timeline as general board items. So just so you know that. I don't think we'll have time to have a full meeting about it before it comes forward before GGC. How many RFQ submissions did we receive? I would say 5 or 6. I don't have the exact number in front of me, and we'll begin working with them as soon as we can get contracts wrapped up. The Willits Justice Center is on Commercial Street in Willits. It is where the sheriff's office used to be located, in the district attorney's office, and the courthouse that used to be there in Willits. Willits Police Department is downstairs. The MCD will be taking over the upstairs or the second floor of that structure. We have been letting folks know that they've been deprioritized. We've started with folks who were coming into the corrections portal in 2022. So we sent initial notices to those folks. That list that went out of deprioritization for folks who came through the 2022 corrections portal, those notices went out before folks became delinquent with 2021 taxes. We're getting ready to re-notice folks that we noticed so that we have a more comprehensive noticing so that it also includes 2021 issues. We also have noticed and did include 2021 delinquencies, folks who are in good standing status. And then we'll be going back through once we complete our reconciliation process of statuses and tax reconciliation, we'll be noticing everyone, right? So every active AG, whether you came through the portal in 2021 and completed in 2021, or you're an active permit holder, we're going to do blanket notification. So we are wrapping that up and getting ready. I imagine our our notices should be coming out for deprioritization. I think we'll be sending a lot of them next week. So just watch your emails, so to speak, if you're concerned. We have an attendee who's recommending that the portal submission opportunities for those who are in good standing be open through the end of the year. That's fine. We could consider that, but we do not have the staff at IS to run rolling submissions, meaning in 2021, when we did the 2021 portal, we every time someone submitted their application materials through that portal, those materials got bundled on a weekly basis. So if you submitted Monday through Friday, we received that transmission of everyone who submitted Monday through Friday on the following Monday. The unfortunate part of that process is that the only staff available to manage getting the files, so to speak, out of the portal and over to our department electronically is IT staff. And IT does not have the staff to run rolling submissions. So if we were to leave the initial submission portal open until the end of the year, we would then be able to review through probably the second week of January, because I think the first week of January is going to be trying for staff. So that means we would not be able to guarantee initial checklists go out until the 14th of January. And then we'd be looking at providing 3 weeks or so for folks to get their corrections together, which means we would not be opening a corrections portal until around the 7th or the 14th of February. I have a lot of concerns, and that's pretty gosh darn late if we're going to try to figure out how to prioritize and potentially craft Appendix Gs for folks if we don't have complete application materials till mid-February or so. So this is why we're trying to really wrap this up in January. So I'll just leave that there, and I'm sure we'll hear some more comments. I'm going to take one more question out of the queue here, out of the Q&A, before we go to folks who have their hands raised, so we can try to get to everyone and get through as many questions and comments as we possibly can today. We have a request from an attendee to provide as much time as possible for in good standing portal submissions and corrections, especially around the holidays. How about opening in early October, closing in late November, so at least 4 weeks are open, and then doing corrections from mid-December to mid-January. I mean, frankly, I don't have a problem with that, but again, it means that we're not going to have final results from those portal submissions until February. I have heartburn about February, but maybe other folks don't. We're going to capture these. We're going to have some more conversation. We'll be talking to IT today about this, and we'll be sending notices out. And I really do sincerely appreciate folks' input and comments on this. I do want to take some questions from folks who have their hands raised. So we are going to shift gears just a little bit here. I'm going to pop up the timer, and just to, I'm still going to leave it at a minute. I'm sorry, but I think there's a lot of conversation to be had today. So right now I have 4 folks with hands raised in the queue. We're going to hear from Hannah Nelson, followed by Michael Katz, and then Monique Ramirez. And so I'm going to leave it at a minute. We're going to try to get through everything that we have in the queue. There's a lot of really poignant, important questions here. And so going to Hannah Nelson first. Hannah, you should be able to now unmute your device and start your question or comment.
Good morning, Kristen. First off, a minute is definitely not enough. There's been a lot of information, so I hope that there's another opportunity to have an in-depth conversation. Second, I really appreciate your taking input and really trying to figure out the right balance of things. I do want to mention that there weren't just people who submitted in 2020 for the good standing. It was also 2021, and in some cases late into the year in 2021 and beginning of 2022. I think that another consideration is that MCD should, for these people in good standing, make sure that throughout the process, whatever is necessary to align with state and not have deprioritizations regarding state authorization or alignment issues and stuff like that needs to be taken into account. I also think that we have a catch-22 here regarding constant time that it takes.
Okay, I would encourage you to get back in the queue if you have additional comments, and we'll see if we can get to everyone. We did not take in good standing materials in 2022 to develop or put people into in good standing. So I just want to be clear that the opportunity to become in good standing status ended in 2021 before we opened the portal. We did not continue to classify folks as in good standing with a few, like very few exceptions. So the in good standing program really ceased as we put together the portal list. We'll go to Michael Katz, followed by Monique Ramirez. Michael, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comments.
For all this, lots of information related to the rolling submission issue for the in good standing. Even if they are not able to do that weekly, are they IT able to do it a couple of times or several times between when the portal would open and potentially closing at the end of the year? So it's not that every single person who submits is waiting until that February deadline, but we can have it happen at a regular cadence, so it doesn't put extra burdens on people during harvest and the holidays, but provides some flexibility.
I do not know the answer to that, but I wrote it down, and I will bring that question to IS. That's a good way to think about it. So we'll see what they have available for staffing and if that's a possibility. We're going to go to Monique Ramirez. Excuse me, Monique. We're going to go to Monique Ramirez, followed by Paul Hansberry, and then I want to take a couple more questions out of the Q&A feature. Monique, you should be able to now unmute your device and start your question or comment.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the meeting. I wasn't able to attend the first part, so my apologies if this has been covered, but I'm just trying to get a sense of how much longer or how many applications have been reviewed for renewals at this point. I know there was a huge backlog that was identified several months ago, and I'm just curious how staff is managing that. Our application was turned in May, and we still haven't heard anything. So if you could provide an update on that, that'd be really great. And if you've already covered it, if you want to just tell me that, and I'll rewatch this later on YouTube so we don't waste time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. So there is a slide earlier in the presentation, Mo, that shows the numbers that we reported for renewals a couple weeks ago with updated numbers. So we'll get the presentation posted today, so you'll be able to look back on that. We've really stepped up our reviews of renewals by doing a preliminary completeness check with planner text. And then once the renewal is complete, the application materials are complete, we assign it for final review. And I do believe I just assigned yours yesterday. So please review the slides when we get them posted. That'll give you more information. We're going to go to Paul Hansberry next, and then we'll go to some questions that are in the Q&A feature. Paul, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your question or comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. You had mentioned about the LJAGP that you had sent out some modifications to the state for the direct grant I guess it was the manual, and you mentioned that the manual will be submitted on the 17th of October. But I'm wondering about timelines. What's the projected timeline for when applications will actually be able to be submitted or be available to be filled out and submitted? If you can give me a good guess on that. And also with the LEAP program, when would they be able to reapply or resubmit if they need additional funding or different modifications to their direct grant budget timeline? Also, you said that there are zero renewals admitted to planners on one of the slides, unless I misunderstood. So I'm just a little confused.
And so that was time. So I'll try to get through these quickly. LJAGP timeline, the progress report that we sent to the state is separate and distinct from the manual that will come before the General Governance Committee in October and then go to the board. I think it is poignant to draw some just to identify some differences or different ways to manage grant applications. So I'm not going to go into depth in answering LEAP questions. I encourage you to bring those LEAP questions. We'll be addressing your questions specifically in today's meeting, Paul, so I'm not going to spend time on that, but I do want to just express that part of what we're doing with the LEAP program is eligibility is one application process. When you go through that eligibility process, it doesn't impact or create a timeline for your grant application to be reviewed, processed, and awarded, okay? When your grant application for LEAP is submitted, we've taken this approach with LEAP grant applications of continually underwriting with the eligible candidate until such time as we feel like there is a awardable grant application. So that timeline for underwriting and review of those applications has been lengthy because we're committed to working with each and every grant applicant until we have a product that will make it through the review process at the county here and result in an award check. Now, the other way that folks, local jurisdictions or agencies or NGOs manage grant opportunities for the public, they open up a window of grant applications, they review all the grant applications, they award the grant applications that are eligible for award, and the ones that aren't awarded have the opportunity to reapply the next award cycle. This is the approach we're leaning towards taking with LJAGP. So what we're hoping to do is wrap up the application and the manual for LJAGP in October, opening a short, probably 2-month window for submissions, closing that window, reviewing everything we receive, awarding what we can award, right? That's complete and meets the standards and the criteria of LJAGP, and then opening up another window, closing it, and then conducting the review. So that's what we're planning right now, and I think that will provide us the most. Opportunity to get grant funds out to the public in a timely manner. Now, we are reviewing, I think, around 95 renewals right now. So I think we have 150 in-house. More than half of them are currently under review. So we're reviewing them, we're sending out notices and providing SharePoint folders for folks to complete renewal applications, where if folks have modifications that are coupled with that renewal, they're getting processed at the same time. So we are diligently working through renewals. I don't know where the thought that we had 0 renewals under review came in, but we have about 95 or so that are under review. And I encourage you to review the presentation, which has those exact numbers identified in it. We will go to a couple questions that are in the Q&A feature before we potentially come back to folks who are asking questions. Do we have any more insight as to how infrastructure developments that involve earthwork that occur after CEQA certification occurs should be handled? Specifically, will a subsequent set of CEQA documents be required? The answer given at the last meeting provided some insight, but was not specific enough. Many people have developments that they are soon to engage with via grant funding from either DFW or LEAP funds, potentially LJAGP. And so will they need to include the potential improvements in their CEQA documents? That needs to be decided now. I think that yes and no. I mean, if you're getting funded through LEAP or DFW or LJAGP to conduct your DFW projects, that's already going to be in your CEQA project or in your Appendix G, right? Because we'll be looking at the Lake or Streambed Alteration Agreement that permits those Lake or Streambed culvert projects that are eligible for funding, right? We'll already have considered that, so to speak. If you're looking at doing, pond installation, I don't know that needs to be, and I don't know that it doesn't at this point, but I'm not convinced that that's going to need to be considered in your CEQA document unless you have no legal source of water other than water hauling. Then we may need to have a conversation about, I've been granted these funds, I'm developing this pond, do I put this into my CEQA document? And so I don't think everything needs to be in there because, again, some of it is tied to other permitting materials that are already going to be considered in that CEQA document. How are in good standing applicants supposed to harvest and do the portal at the same time? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, all I know is that what we'd like to do is make sure that we have complete applications as soon as possible. And I don't have timing answers for folks who are harvesting. We will look into Michael Katz's suggestion about opening it and leaving it open and then just saying, like, can we get anything submitted every 2 or 3 weeks over a couple of month period? And we'll have some additional considerations to think about here. A request for us to make these meetings longer. Possibly, but the amount of time that goes into prepping for these meetings, the cost associated with having 2 staff persons on these meetings, the hosting and facilitating a 2-hour meeting. I don't know if it benefits anyone, to be honest with you. Attention spans are usually around 55 minutes and I get pretty tired hosting these meetings. So we'll try to fit more public meetings in as we're wrapping up technical assistance. But an hour and a half seems to be a good time for not losing attention and or burning out our staff too much. A demand from the public to see an overall work plan for the MCD, not just pieces, but all the components in the map and have it mapped out over time, please. Well, I would love that too, but here we are and staff is working diligently and we are woefully understaffed until we have space to really manage having some place to put additional staff. So we are manually opening 300 plus records to review licenses and verifying them in the state system. And so that project just alone, opening licenses to review them for how we prioritize, probably has around 25 to 30 hours put into it just in the last few days. So we are planning and preparing this timeline, but there's going to be some things we can't account for, like folks reprioritizing themselves. We have an applicant who would prefer the opening of the portal sooner rather than later, allowing the most time for MCD to conduct reviews. The sooner applicants can receive their permit, the better, and this will allow more time for CEQA consultants to integrate the information into the Appendix G documents and submit with room to spare. I agree. This is one of my big concerns with waiting and delaying and opening that portal. No, we can't get contract IT staff to help with grab portal submissions on a regular basis. I mean, contract staff doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process of reviewing contracts. If there's, and oftentimes requires an RFQ or RFP to even get to that contract state, unless you can show an exception to bid where you don't have to put out a notice for submissions for qualifications. So, and remember, the reason why we're moving away from development here at the county level and into an off-the-shelf platform, Acela, right, specifically, is having one IT staff person who built the portal be the one who knows the portal, who has the training and the capability to help us manage the portal or do the management of the portal on behalf of the MCD is really not a good practice to extend. So we're really, all of these reasons for moving away from the MC portal are the reasons why it's hard to have rolling submissions. How does half of CDFW SSHR comments impact timeline? I don't know what the half is, but I do know that we are still reviewing sensitive species habitat review submissions. So when folks submit their questionnaires and all of their information or management plans that might be required for that submission, our staff is still conducting our internal review. We do have, not everyone is referred to DFW. And so if we can wrap those up in-house, we can. If we come across an application, whether it's renewal or a new application that needs referral, but that referral is not available due to contracting negotiations, we will make a decision on a case-by-case basis about how to proceed. I think that's the best we can do under current circumstances. Is there any way that MCD can bring forward a request to BOS to allow for a payment plan for tax delinquencies, including a tax penalty and interest payment plan? I really do think that would be great. We don't have authority over the tax ordinance, so this really would need to be a treasurer tax collector program, and it would be the treasurer tax collector that would be bringing that forward. We'd be more than happy to work with TTC on that, but it likely also requires an ordinance change. So moving forward, payment plan, I think is not an instant solution here. I think it would take some time. And we still have other items in front of something like that for development, such as appeals, etc. Notice of following, submissions for notice of following do need to be in by the end of the month. So we'll be closing the notice of following submission opportunity on October 1st. So please get them in by the end of the month. Has MCD considered meeting one-on-one with in good standing applicants to help facilitate the upload of documents? It's 163 people. We don't even have a space to meet with any member of the public one-on-one. I mean, we have no public meeting space, no conference room, no additional offices here where we're currently located. So structurally, and staff-wise, I think that would be cause significant delays. DFW is not reviewing sensitive species habitat referrals that are sent to them. They aren't stalling. They have stopped conducting reviews around the second week of July due to the fact that the contract has not been finalized. The contract is still under negotiation. So hopefully we'll be hearing back from DFW soon, and we'll be wrapping that up. It has been several weeks, and County Council has reached out a number of times. So we're hopeful we'll be able to wrap it up soon. But the process on DFW's side is a little more lengthy than on our side, the county side, simply because our amendments, or the county's amendments, requested amendments, go to DFW. They're reviewed by DFW Legal. They then go up to the state oversight agency, the general services agency, for additional review before they can possibly come back to us for further negotiation conversation. So I would expect a next draft, hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. But again, it's been probably 4 weeks at this point since we've heard back from DFW on the last requested round of amendments. Okay, I think that is going to be it for today. We're at 10:02, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be, if you have not signed up for Canna Notes, please do so. It's the best way to get notices of upcoming meetings. I think we're going to have some more conversation with the public and our applicants once we have additional information from informational services. So with that said, I think we can go ahead and adjourn, and please do remember to join us for the LEAP meeting this afternoon, running from 3:30 to 5 p.m. All right, everyone.